Welcome back to the Green Connection. The weather has been different, strange, nothing like it is in the East Coast, nothing like in the Midwest. We've got a wonderful weather, and this is a wonderful city. And what we're going to talk about today is one of the things that helped make the city so great, and that was Hemisfair. And with me as my guest, I have Bob Shemwell, who is a principal at Overland Partners, who's going to talk about what the Hemisfair, I don't know how you would say, Hemisfair Fairgrounds is going to turn into. It's going to be more than a park. It's going to be a living space where everybody is going to enjoy everything and can enjoy a way of life that is different, but really comparable to the old Hemisphere. Welcome, Bob, to the Green Connection.
Well, thanks for having me, Rita.
And well, you're too young to be here to know about the original Hemisphere. But I'm sure you did. I noticed that in the newspaper you've got all these buildings that have a tinge of going back and combining the new with the old. And also, I see your background. You've got a tremendous background that you're into sustainable, and that's what this whole show is always about: green living and sustainability. And I was just wondering how you're going to apply the sustainability to the things that you're going to put in the park.
Sure. Well, we're taking a comprehensive view of sustainability. So we are looking at infrastructure, landscape, water use, building envelopes, building siding, different technology that's coming into it, power generation, really the full complement of things that you would think about for sustainability, we're trying to put into the project. We feel like you referenced the idea that some of the buildings seem to touch on the past. And that's very purposeful. When we sat down, we said that this ought to become something that could not be built anywhere else for anyone else, that it is that specific to San Antonio, that specific to the things that make us who we are, that's specific to our history and culture. But also, while it looks backwards and touches on those things, it has to be aspirational and look forward. So we came up with the concept of roots and wings, where we have parts of the building that really do speak to those essential qualities of San Antonio, and then pieces that really point towards a sustainable, walkable, urban future that I think we hope to have.
So it's going to be, most of the buildings that you have, and we're going to show pictures later, because what we're going to do first, after a few minutes, is show you what Hemisfair was. It's hard to imagine when you walk through the park that all this was going on and all this was there, and to see some of the houses that are still there that had the gay 90s club and the Philippine restaurants and the French restaurants. They have a really interesting history, and the history of the fair. The motto or the theme of the fair was peace, international peace, and that happens through young people. And so they brought a lot of young people, sort of like the Olympics. I always think that it helps people understand each other a lot better.
Yeah. Well, the original theme was the confluence of civilizations, which is also the name of the Juan O'Gorman mural that is on the Lila Cockrell Theater. Mm-hmm. And the way that we talked about it internally is that in 1968, Hemisfair brought the world to San Antonio, and that we think that the redevelopment of Hemisfair will actually bring San Antonio to the world. And so we think that's a great inflection point and a great way to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the fair as well. So.
Well, and the 300th birthday of the city, which is, I still don't know what they're going to do for it. I haven't seen a lot, but maybe.
Well, we'll break ground on Hemisfair for one.
So when are you going to do that?
This summer, so probably in July. As soon as all the festivities clear out for the Final Four, then we're going to have the opportunity to mobilize on the site, and you'll start to see a large hole appear in the ground where the underground parking will be.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic. Going to be filling up my neighborhood. I live 2 blocks behind it.
This has been an interesting...
But that's good, because instead of us having parking problems, they can go park in the
Exactly. So one of the things that we've done in the process is that we met with all of the neighborhood associations close by, so Lavaca, King William, and Dignity Hill, all those, and particularly for Lavaca, because you really feel the brunt of now that the park is open for the children's garden, the Anaguarna Garden. It's been very successful, but what that does is create a parking problem. And right now, there's no way to meet that need. So the two projects that are underway, the first one that David Adelman is building with Area Real Estate will have public parking, and then our project will have underground parking that spans along South Alamo, and then jumps over and spans onto Market Street and also touches onto Nueva. Very important because we know that Hemisphere is going to be a place of celebration and a lot of special events. And what that drives is lots of people coming
They
down.
can stay in one
and
place.
they're all coming at the same time. So to mitigate that, we have connections into the garage from Nueva, from South Alamo, and from Market Street, so that people can get in easily, people can get out easily, and that we don't overburden any one street or place with cars and traffic.
No wonder you're the principal of. Well, let's take a look at why we have Hemisfair Park. Actually, we should even go back a little bit before the fair, when that were actually streets, and it was a neighborhood and a church and some retail. And a lot of the houses that are there were originally there. Some of them were moved there, and some of them have moved out. But to show what it looked like during the fair, let's take a look at Hemisfair.
In the early 1960s, the movers and shakers of San Antonio planned the grandest fiesta ever to celebrate the city's 250th birthday. They called it Hemisfair. After a 5-year flurry of preparation, on April 6, 1968, Hemisfair welcomed the world for this birthday bash, which lasted half a year. It was a little jewel of a fair, and Governor John Connally pronounced it the most exciting 92 acres in Texas.
It was just an occasion to say, world, here we are, and we are special and different.
Hemisfair visitors had a bird's-eye view of the grounds from the Swiss Sky Ride, strolled above the crowds on elevated walkways, floated the canals, mini-monorailed to and through the many pavilions, or simply joined the throng at ground level, weaving amongst the many fabulous sculptures and cascading fountains punctuating the grounds. Water ski performances on a tiny lake at the foot of the Tower of the Americas provided a cool rest. The 43-second ride up the tower in a glass-fronted elevator was a tummy grabber, and the observation deck allowed our first panoramic view of the city from on high. Hemisfair, originally conceived to be a fair of the Americas, gained status as a World's Fair with the participation of 20-some nations whose pavilions, exhibits, restaurants, and boutiques truly provided a confluence of civilizations. Local delicacies gained international favor, and foreign foods were in turn savored by local folks. Without a doubt, the single most memorable feature at Hemisfair was the performance of the Flying Indians, Los Voladores. Cutting-edge films premiered, puppets entertained the very young and the very adults. Latin American folk art and some of Europe's finest artwork were there to behold. Strolling bands and performers seemed to be everywhere at once, and Fiesta Island provided thrills and chills. World Fair groupies came, and some stayed. The city gained a much-needed civic center, a grand federal courthouse, a museum of Texan cultures, and a theater for the performing arts crowned with Juan O'Gorman's magnificent mosaic mural. A river extension project reinvigorated the central city, paving the way for a booming tourist industry. And a hotel was built in record time and in a most extraordinary fashion.
It was romantic, picturesque. Everybody, a Texan from wherever, felt that San Antonio was a piece of his life. I think it was the just right town for that to happen.
San Antonio, once the center of culture and population in Texas, by the early 1960s was fast fading into the shadows cast by Dallas and Houston. How on earth did this underling Texas city garner a World's Fair?
That was a tremendous undertaking for a city our size at that particular time.
I think we were a city in doldrums.
Realizing that San Antonio could use an economic boost, local businessman Jerome Harris suggested a World's Fair and then coined the name Hemisfair. Then Henry B. Gonzalez got elected to Congress.
The first Hispanic in the history of Berry County to go to Congress. And he worked out the 20th century plan for the 20th district.
That plan included a Fair of the Americas to help his hometown find a place in the sun. Congressman Gonzalez called upon his friend Bill Sinken to get the ball rolling.
I said, well, Henry, what do we do at a fair? He said, that's going to be your problem. I'll help you get the money. You get the ideas.
And Bill Sinken, to me, had the vision for the fair.
Top businessmen and contributors formed an executive board which met every Tuesday morning for nearly 5 years and never lacked a quorum. In short, community businesses, large and small, got behind the fair with great enthusiasm. However, a lot of money had to be raised. To begin, Marshall Steves formed a plan and generated $6.5 million.
Got it underwritten so quickly, record time.
It was very easy to sell to me in those days because I thought this was an underwriting, not a gift.
It was 1963. There was much to accomplish and only 5 years in which to organize a major fair. O'Neill Ford was the first architect on the project, but was later fired. Bill Sinken invited his architect friend Allison Peary to work on a site plan.
I said, swell, where's it going to be? Well, we don't know yet. Well, who's going to be in it? Well, we don't know yet. Well, what's it going to be about? Well, we don't know yet. And besides that, he wanted right away, at Henry Gonzalez's insistence, to go to Central America and drum up enthusiasm for the fair.
So Al Peary, in turn, invited his friend Frank Duane to produce a pamphlet, a brochure, something to present to the heads of state in Central America. It was Friday. They needed it by Monday.
Basically, I had nothing to go on. It was a trade fair. It was a fair for the New World alone. That was about it. It didn't have a location. It certainly didn't have a budget. So I do the copy. And a page here, 2 sentences for this. It takes overnight, but all night.
Bill Sinken and Mayor Walter McAllister visited 5 Central American countries and returned with assurances of participation from all 5.
We thought we had a great trip, and within 60 days after we had returned, there were 4 presidents gone, deposed, fired, and we were left with 1, Costa Rica. So our trip there wasn't particularly fruitful.
Carlos Fryman, one of the first staff members hired to work in international relations, was housed in a tiny space at La Villita with Richard Miller, coordinator of exhibits.
We used to share the restroom as our office, you know, because there was no other place to be seated. And we used to share the John, obviously, covered, and that's what we had as an office for a long while.
Other creative people were brought in from throughout the country to tackle the job of generating ideas and themes. Sherry Wagner was hired to plan youth participation in the fair with Project Y.
But soon after I arrived, it was evident that there were so many needs and not very many people. So my job quickly morphed into many, many different things.
Until a site was selected for the fair, the creative team marked time by working on thematic concepts, a logo, and El Abrazo, a monthly magazine.
It was a brochure for corporate participants, national participants. It was one of those glossy, elegant, the rhetoric things. It wasn't really about anything. It was full of promises.
Now site selection becomes paramount. Several suburban locations were touted.
The strongest pressures came from people who wanted it right downtown in order to do two things: to renew a part of downtown and to help vitalize the downtown for the future.
A 92-acre area just south of San Antonio's downtown was identified. A neighborhood of mixed ethnicity with some very grand homes, but many falling into disrepair. Congressman Henry B. Gonzalez decided it would be a good urban renewal project.
At that time, our downtown was getting to be in a pretty sad shape, and urban renewal played a crucial part. They secured that 90 acres quicker than any land they ever got before.
But there was a lot of controversy over the old houses, and a tremendous preservation effort was mounted.
It was my first conscious time of really seeing an urban renewal project, and I didn't quite understand until that time that they really were removing people for this place. So it became, to me, and in many of the young people working on the staff, we were passionately, totally devoted to trying to save every one of the buildings that we could possibly save.
Screenwriter Claude Stanish was born and raised in that neighborhood.
I think the house behind me belonged to the Cush family, and the Cushes were sort of relatives of ours, belonged to the same parish I did, St. Michael's Parish. It was a Polish parish that was almost there where the Tower of the America now stands.
Well, it was kind of a lengthy clip, but it really was interesting. And I'm so old, I was there and saw all of these things happening. And one of the things that's still in the park is the structure, part of the structure from the mini monorail, which is over the lake right by the tower. And now it's sort of a dead space all around. So what's going to happen next?
Well,
now we're going to look at pictures.
Well, a couple things. One is that, you know, what struck me when with the clip was how many of the people from San Antonio that when I first came to San Antonio were instrumental in introducing me to the city and connecting me to people. So Bill Sinkin and Marshall Steves and H.P. Zachary and all these people who really you know, made Hemisfair, but also helped to make the city what it is. And I think one of the great points of connection is that the main developer behind our work is actually H.P. Zachary's grandson. And so while H.P. helped to form the park in the first iteration, his grandson is coming along to help with the reformation.
So you've got a generational connection.
Yeah, which I think is wonderful. That's
well, yeah. Bill Sinkin I knew, and I worked for Jack Valenti, who was an aide to Johnson. So Lady Bird and President Johnson were friends, and Nellie and John Connolly.
Yeah, fabulous group of people, and I think it's important to remember them because I think since they are passing on, is that it's a challenge to the next group of people coming along to say who will step in, who will seize the moment, who will be the driving forces for making the city a better place. So I think for all your viewers out there that's a challenge for them, is to step in and help become those people.
Well, speaking of Lady Bird, you had a little connection, a bigger connection more recently than Hemisfair.
Yeah, we did. When I first was working at Overland Partners, we had the chance to design the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center for Mrs. Johnson. And it was a rare privilege because she was such, as you know, you met her and knew her, and she was such a gracious, phenomenal person.
Lady. We used to have a lot of lunches together.
So there's no more gracious woman, no person that was more interested in you than Mrs. Johnson. I mean, she's just fabulous. And she really inspired us. So you asked about sustainability. So the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center was one of the true first public buildings to become sustainable. Well before U.S. Green Building Association, well before LEED. We had to invent our own environmental checklist. We had to create our own mechanics to do water harvesting and some of the things that are very commonplace now. But she challenged us and she inspired us. And so in this design that we're doing, which is much more sophisticated now, we can really trace those roots back to her with Hemisfair originally, inspiring us in the design of the Wildflower Center, and then the ability for us to do what we're doing today. So it's a fantastic story.
Okay, so what is in the future for Hemisfair Park?
So there are 2 development parcels that are right along the park. And for people to understand, this site is truly one of a kind. We like to say we found the mythical corner of Maine and Maine because it's the major north-south with Alamo. It's the major east-west with Commerce and Market. And when you're standing on the site, you can pick up a rock and throw it and hit most of the cultural icons that really define San Antonio, from the Alamo to the Tower to the Juana Gorman mural to the Riverwalk. All those things that really form us are right there. So it's such an important site. But not only that, there are a handful of sites in the world where you have buildings and activity that actually land and you walk out and all of a sudden you're on the park. Most places you have to go down and out of a building and then across a street to get into a park. So it gives us an opportunity to activate the park in a way that is just absolutely unique. On these 2 development parcels, the one that we've designed so far is the parcel along South Alamo.
Is this the first one?
Yeah, this is on the first parcel.
Yeah, I think we have a picture of the first one, which is an interesting design.
So you're actually looking at the hotel, the mixed-use hotel building. So the ground floor of all the buildings are retail, food and beverage, public access, and the thesis was for the buildings to extend the park onto them. And so the bottom layers are publicly activated. They're the same material as the park will be constructed out of. They have vegetation and water that come up them as well, and then is surmounted by a hotel. Looking across from La Villita, which I think is the...
Which connects the 2 parcels.
The 2 parts.
Otherwise, what are they going to do with traffic on Alamo?
Well, South Alamo is being completely rebuilt, and so one of the exciting things is not only are we doing the development of the hotel, office building, and urban market on our parcel, but at the same time the city is developing the park and redoing South Alamo Street into what they call a complete street. So there's going to be a lot of vegetation, local access lanes, very pedestrian friendly. It's a complete transformation for that. And La Villita is getting refurbished at the same time. So essentially what is going on is from the Arneson River Theater all the way across through Villita, South Alamo, the development site that we're working on, the Civic Park, and the redevelopment of the Convention Center back down to the Riverwalk is all being done, and it's being done at the same time, which is fantastic because it gives us an opportunity to coordinate the design. And this is an absolutely unique circumstance.
And it's more cohesive to bring everything together. I can remember when La Villita had the little craftsmen in the middle of the space making their little whatever they made.
Well, now they're going to have Johnny Hernandez and his partners making wonderful local food. But the point is that for public perception, as you walk, you'll never know when I'm in the park and when I'm not. It's all going to be very seamless.
So there's going to be no motor traffic on Alamo?
No, there will be traffic, but the way that the street is designed is very pedestrian friendly and meant to facilitate that connection back and forth across. So
I thought maybe they'd do a bridge or something.
No, and actually it's a very clever design, and maybe you'll have me back and I'll talk to you about that particular design.
Yeah, we can just go to the future instead of including the past.
That's right. No, it's a much more sophisticated and I think a beautiful way to connect the 2 sides. So I think if you're on the next image that you're holding, that's the urban market.
Yeah, this is across the street from the park, right?
Well,
yeah,
it's as you cross from La Villita, you enter between buildings, and the first place that you'll arrive at is the urban market, and that's the segue between Villita and the park. It's meant to be a very transparent pavilion that'll have a lot of different vendors and activity inside of it.
Is this going to be facing Alamo?
It faces Alamo and it faces the park, so it has the 2
Alamo
major faces.
And the park
it's in between them. Yeah.
Very nice. I think you all saw the photo of that. I hope you did. Okay, these buildings, these are the 2 buildings that are side by side with the Tower of Life in the middle.
Yep, that's right.
And is this the park?
The park is in the foreground, and then what you're seeing is on the right is the backside of the mixed-use hotel, and then on the left is the mixed-use office building. The urban market is actually underneath Tower Life. So if you look at Tower Life, the market is right there in the gap. I think that one of the exciting things is that the buildings are organized so that they really create a sense of invitation into the park. But when you're in the park, it connects you back to the city, and so that you can see these icons like the Tower Life building, like the Torch of Friendship. And one of the fun things is in the clip, in the video clip, you know how it talks about the publication that was done for Hemisfair being called El Abrazo, you know, an embrace, which is really, I didn't realize that until today when you showed me that, but our form of the hotel with this curve is meant to be an embrace to the park, and we call it El Abrazo. We call it the embrace because we think it's a great backdrop. So I love the symmetry of tying the two stories together.
These two buildings, what are those, offices?
The hotel on the right and office on the left.
Oh, okay. And the other shot that we had of the hotel was
from the opposite side.
Yeah,
it was from
facing the park.
No, this faces the park. The earlier photos, earlier drawings were coming from the Alamo in that area.
Then we have. What is this?
That's also the hotel building, and that's coming up South Alamo.
Oh, that's the side of the building.
That's the side of the building.
Side of the curve.
Yeah.
And then next to it is
the office building. Yeah. So, and one of the things that we were trying to do, if you notice on the drawing, how the face is very sculpted. It has those long linear lines, because as we looked around San Antonio, what we realized is Joske's, Medical Arts, the old Alamo National Bank, even the shaft of the Tower of the Americas have these fluted, sculpted, perpendicular, parallel lines, and so we wanted to bring that into the design and reinvent.
That reminded me of the tower, actually.
Well, I'm glad you saw it.
Yeah, so what is the timeline on this?
So we begin construction this summer, and it'll take about 3 years to construct.
Be finished when?
In 3 years after this, so 2021.
I hope I'm still here.
Oh, you'll be here. You're going to dance on the plaza up above.
And what gave you the inspiration to do this very quickly? If you can see our time goes almost so fast here, I can't tell you.
Well, really, I would call it a privilege, not so much an inspiration, but because it's such a privilege, it's kept us very focused, wanting to do our best, to give our best back to our city.
Well, you've done a great job, and I know all of the city. I know Ron Nirenberg, who's the mayor. He used to be the program manager at KRTU, the jazz station, where I was a volunteer. I can't believe he's mayor. He's so great. I didn't know he was so smart. And so it's becoming a small world. All these people are coming together and bringing back the good old days.
Well, thank you for being one of the people who connects us.
Well, thank you so much for being with us. And it's time to go. Thank you for being with us. Be happy and stay green.